My name is Evelyn Carter. I am 78 years old, a retired schoolteacher, and I have lived in the same white wooden house on Willow Creek Lane for over 50 years. This house is my sanctuary, filled with memories of my late husband, my children growing up, and the quiet evenings spent on the porch watching sunsets. I never thought the walls of this home would one day witness the darkest betrayal of my life. It happened on a rainy Tuesday evening. The storm outside was raging, but the storm inside my heart was far worse. My son, Daniel, and his wife, Linda, had come over for what they claimed was a family tea night. They brought a tray with my favorite Earl Grey, the same one I have loved since my 20s. I didn't notice at first, but there was something about the way Linda's hands trembled when she poured my cup, or the way Daniel's eyes avoided mine. The tea smelled slightly off, bitter in a way that didn't match the delicate citrus aroma I knew so well. I lifted the cup to my lips, and just as the warm liquid touched my tongue, I caught the faint taste of something metallic, something wrong. My instincts screamed at me. I looked at their faces. They smiled too wide, too forced. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from the crushing realization that my own blood wanted me gone. They wanted this house, the home I built with my husband. They didn't care about the memories, the love, or me. They only saw dollar signs. I pretended to sip more, nodding and smiling, as they watched with anticipation. My mind raced. I had a choice: confront them now or play along. And in that moment I decided to play along, because I had something they didn't: time and cunning. As soon as they left, I poured the tea into a jar and hid it. I spent the entire night planning my next move. My body trembled, not from the poison but from rage. They thought I was weak, that I would die quietly. Oh, how wrong they were. The next day I made sure to invite them back. This time I brewed my own tea. I used the exact same jar they had poisoned, only I added my own twist. The smell was the same, the color was the same, and they had no idea what they were about to drink. When I served it to them, my hands didn't shake. My voice was steady. They smiled, unaware that their plan was about to backfire in the cruelest way. They raised their cups, laughing as if everything was normal, and I raised mine too. I watched their lips touch the rim, watched them swallow the very thing they had prepared for me. At that moment, I knew the tables had turned. Daniel suddenly coughed, his face twisting in confusion. Linda's hand trembled, and she dropped the cup, spilling tea across the table. Their eyes widened as they realized something wasn't right. I leaned back in my chair, looking at them with the calm of a woman who had been pushed too far. "How does it taste?" I asked softly, my voice laced with steel. Their expressions turned from confusion to terror. That's when Daniel clutched his chest, gasping for air, and Linda's hands clawed at the table as if trying to hold on to life itself. I stood, my heart pounding with a mixture of triumph and sorrow. They had made their choice, and now they had to live with it if they could. But just as I reached for the phone to call for help, or maybe to let them suffer a little longer, I heard footsteps behind me. Someone else was in the house. Someone I didn't expect. The door creaked, and a shadow fell across the room. "Evelyn," a voice said, cold and unfamiliar. "You weren't supposed to find out." I froze, my eyes narrowing, as a third figure stepped into the light. Who was this person, and how did they know about the plan? What happened next would change everything. To find out what happens in the next chapter, stay tuned. This is just the beginning. If this story gripped you, like, comment, and subscribe because you won't believe what's coming next. The figure stepped forward, and as the dim light from the lamp illuminated his face, my heart nearly stopped. It was James, my late husband's brother. I hadn't seen him in years, not since the bitter argument over the family land decades ago. He had aged, his once sharp features now worn by time, but his eyes burned with the same greed I remembered. "James," I whispered, my voice trembling with both shock and rage. "What are you doing here?" He smirked, as if my question was amusing. "Cleaning up a mistake," he said, glancing at Daniel and Linda, who were both struggling to breathe. They were supposed to finish this quietly. "But you, Evelyn, you always were smarter than the rest of us." The realization hit me like a thunderbolt. This wasn't just Daniel and Linda's doing. James had orchestrated it. He wanted my house, my land, everything I owned. He had manipulated them, promising them a share of what was rightfully mine, only to use them as pawns in his twisted game. My rage boiled inside me, but I kept my face calm. "You came here to kill me too?" I asked, my voice laced with defiance. James chuckled coldly. "Not kill you, Evelyn. Just speed up what's already inevitable. You're old, fragile. No one would suspect a thing." I took a step closer, my eyes locked on his. "You underestimate me," I said quietly. "You always have." He pulled something from his pocket, a small vial filled with a dark liquid. My blood ran cold. "One more sip," he sneered, "and no one will ever question your death." Before he could move, Daniel groaned loudly from the floor, his body twitching. Linda was gasping, her face pale and sweaty. James turned to them with a look of disgust. "Pathetic," he muttered. Using the moment of distraction, I reached for the fireplace poker beside me. With a strength I didn't know I still had, I swung it at his arm, knocking the vial to the ground where it shattered, spilling its contents across the carpet. James roared in anger, lunging at me, but I stood my ground, my heart pounding like a war drum. The struggle was fierce. He grabbed my shoulders, trying to overpower me, but years of surviving life's cruelties had made me tougher than he expected. I shoved him back, and he stumbled, hitting the edge of the table. The noise startled the neighbor's dog outside, and I prayed someone would hear. Suddenly James stopped fighting. He stared at me with a look of pure hatred. "This isn't over," he spat, retreating toward the door. "You have no idea what's coming." Then he disappeared into the night, leaving Daniel and Linda barely clinging to consciousness. I stood there trembling, the adrenaline coursing through my veins. My enemies were falling one by one, but James had just declared war. And I knew this was far from over. I picked up the phone and called an ambulance, my voice steady even as my hands shook. When the paramedics arrived, they rushed Daniel and Linda to the hospital. I told them it was food poisoning, keeping my truth hidden for now. But as I sat alone in my living room, staring at the broken vial on the carpet, I realized I needed to be more careful than ever. James was still out there, and he wasn't finished. The next morning I went to the police, ready to tell them everything. But when I arrived, something chilling stopped me in my tracks. On the hood of my car was an envelope. Inside was a single photograph, me sleeping in my bed, taken from inside my room. On the back, in bold letters, it read, "You have 3 days to leave the house." My heart nearly stopped. Someone had been inside my home, watching me while I slept. This wasn't just about the house anymore. This was personal. I clutched the photo with trembling hands. Fear and rage twisted together inside me, but one thing was clear. They wanted me gone. And I wasn't going anywhere. But how far would they go to take what was mine? You won't believe what happens next. Stay with me because the fight has only begun. If this story keeps you on edge, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Next chapter will leave you speechless. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak in the house, every rustle of the wind made my heart race. I sat in my armchair, clutching the photo with one hand and the poker with the other. I was no longer just a victim. I was being hunted. They wanted me terrified, but fear was not going to break me. The next morning I took the photo to the police. Officer Reynolds, a young man who barely looked 30, examined it carefully. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "this is serious. Whoever took this photo had access to your home. We'll set up patrols in the area." But his voice lacked conviction. I knew they wouldn't protect me fully. They'd check in, maybe drive by once or twice, but James was cunning. He had already been inside without leaving a trace. I needed to outsmart him. I called my old friend Helen, who had been my neighbor for over 40 years. She was the only person I could trust. When she came over, I showed her the photo. Her face went pale. "Evelyn, this is madness. You need to leave this house. I shook my head. If I leave, they win. This is my home, Helen. I will fight for it. Helen squeezed my hand. Then I'll help you. That night we installed cameras. Real ones, not the fake ones I had used before. Every corner of my house was now under watch. I also changed the locks and kept the poker close. The house felt like a fortress, but deep down, I knew it was just a fragile defense against someone determined to break me. 2 days later, the envelope on my car was replaced by another one, this time slipped under my door. Inside was a USB drive. Against my better judgment, I plugged it into my laptop. A video started playing. It showed James standing in a dark room, his face illuminated by a single light. "Evelyn," he said coldly, "you think you can outsmart me? You've always been stubborn, but that house is mine. Leave it, or I'll make sure you never see another sunrise." The video ended with the sound of a gun being cocked. My blood ran cold. This wasn't an empty threat. The following day, Daniel and Linda were released from the hospital. They came straight to my house, looking pale and weak. Daniel broke down in tears. "Mom," he said, "we were wrong. Uncle James, he forced us. He said he'd kill us if we didn't help." I wanted to believe him, but part of me still burned with anger. Linda nodded, her voice trembling. "He's planning something worse, Evelyn. He's not going to stop." For the first time I saw the fear in their eyes, the same fear I felt. They weren't my only enemies, they were victims too. And together maybe we could stand against James. That night we formed a plan. I pretended to leave town, packing bags and driving off, but in reality, I hid at Helen's house across the street, watching my home through binoculars. Hours passed. Then, just past midnight, I saw him. James crept up to my porch, wearing black gloves and carrying a crowbar. He picked the lock with ease and slipped inside. I called the police immediately, my heart racing. Officer Reynolds arrived within minutes, but by the time he entered the house, James was gone. The only thing left was a message carved into my dining table. "You can't hide forever." The next morning I went back into my home. The fear was still there, but so was my resolve. James was escalating, and I needed to end this before it was too late. But then, just as I was cleaning up the carved message, my phone buzzed. It was a video call from an unknown number. When I answered, the screen showed James holding Helen hostage, a knife at her throat. "Your friend is paying the price for helping you," he growled. "You have one chance to save her. Bring the house deed to the old mill at midnight. Come alone." My hands shook as tears blurred my vision. I had to save Helen. But giving him the deed meant losing everything. As the clock ticked toward midnight, I packed the deed into an envelope, but I also slipped something else inside. A recording device. If James wanted a fight, I was ready to give him one. When I arrived at the mill, the place was eerily silent. The smell of rust and decay filled the air. My heart pounded as I stepped inside, clutching the envelope tightly. From the shadows, James emerged, dragging Helen with him. "Put the envelope on the ground," he demanded. I knelt slowly, placing the envelope down, my mind racing with what would happen next. Just as James reached for it, the distant wail of sirens filled the night air. His face twisted in fury. "You called them," he hissed. Before I could answer, everything erupted into chaos. Stay tuned for the next chapter, where you'll see how this deadly confrontation unfolds. If this story keeps you hooked, like, comment and subscribe. The battle for my home is just heating up. James' grip on Helen tightened as the red and blue lights reflected off the broken windows of the mill. The sirens grew louder, cutting through the tension like a knife. His eyes darted from me to the entrance, fury twisting his face. "You think you're clever, Evelyn," he spat, pressing the blade closer to Helen's throat. She whimpered, her eyes wide with terror. "You called the cops, and now she dies because of you." My heart thudded painfully in my chest. I raised my hands slowly, stepping toward him. "James, you don't have to do this," I said, keeping my voice calm despite the fear gripping me. "Take me instead. Let her go." The police stormed in, shouting commands, their guns drawn. James yanked Helen back deeper into the shadows, using her as a shield. "Stay back or she dies," he roared. The officers froze, their weapons steady but their eyes cautious. In that moment I knew I had to do something. My old body might not have been as strong as it once was, but my spirit was unbreakable. As James dragged Helen toward the back exit, I grabbed a loose brick from the floor and hurled it with all my strength. It struck his arm, making him yelp and loosen his grip just enough for Helen to stumble free. The officers seized the chance and rushed forward. James bolted out the back, disappearing into the night like a ghost. The police gave chase, but he vanished into the trees. Helen collapsed into my arms, sobbing. "You saved me," she whispered. The officers took our statements, promising to hunt James down. But I knew he wouldn't stop. He was like a shadow, always lurking, always plotting. After the chaos, Helen stayed with me, too shaken to return home. Daniel and Linda came over as well, their faces pale. "Mom," Daniel said softly, "we need to leave. He'll come back." I looked around my home, the walls scarred with the memories of the past few days. Leaving was not an option. "No," I said firmly. "This is my house. And I'm not running." The next few days were quiet, almost unnervingly so. We installed more cameras, reinforced the doors, and stayed alert. But the calm was an illusion. Late one night, the cameras caught something terrifying. James standing at the edge of the yard, staring straight into the lens with a chilling smile. The footage sent shivers down my spine. He wasn't hiding anymore. He was letting me know he was close, always watching. Then the unthinkable happened. One evening, as we sat in the living room, the power suddenly cut out. Darkness swallowed the house, followed by the sound of footsteps on the porch. Helen screamed, and Daniel grabbed a bat, his hands shaking. I held my breath, listening as the door handle rattled. The lock held, but only for a moment. With a deafening crash, the door flew open. James stood there, his silhouette framed by the flicker of the emergency lights. In his hand was a gun. "Everyone sit down," he barked, stepping inside. "This ends tonight." We froze, the fear thick in the air. James waved the gun, forcing us to back into the living room. "You thought you could outsmart me, Evelyn. You humiliated me. Now I'm taking what's mine." I stared at him, my anger rising. "This house was never yours," I said through gritted teeth. "You're nothing but a coward." His face twisted with rage, and he pointed the gun at me. "Say goodbye, Evelyn." But before he could pull the trigger, a blinding light flooded the room. SWAT officers stormed in, tackling James to the ground. The gun clattered to the floor as they pinned him down. He screamed, thrashing, but it was over. They dragged him away in handcuffs. His eyes locked on me with pure hatred. "This isn't over," he shouted as they took him outside. The officers reassured us he'd be behind bars, but deep down, I knew James wasn't the kind of man to stay locked up forever. He'd find a way out. And when he did, he'd come for me again. That night I sat on my porch, staring at the stars. The house was quiet, but my heart was still heavy. The fight wasn't finished. And my fears were confirmed when, the very next morning, I received a call from the police. Their words sent ice through my veins. "Mrs. Carter, James escaped custody last night. We believe he's coming for you." I hung up, my hands trembling. He was free. He was out there. And this time he wouldn't make mistakes. The final battle for my home had only just begun. Stay tuned for the next chapter, because the next confrontation will be deadly. If this story has you holding your breath, like, comment, and subscribe. The storm is far from over. The sun barely rose the next morning. The sky was gray, heavy with clouds that mirrored the dread in my heart. James had escaped, and I knew he wouldn't waste time. This wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about vengeance. I sat at my kitchen table, sipping a cup of tea I had brewed myself, my eyes fixed on the door. Every sound outside, every car passing, every branch snapping, made me flinch. Helen and Linda were upstairs trying to get some rest, while Daniel kept watch near the living room window, a bat clutched in his hands. I could feel it in my bones. James was close. At noon, a knock echoed through the house. It was soft, almost polite, which made it all the more terrifying. Daniel looked at me, his eyes wide. "Don't answer it," he whispered. Ignoring his warning, I walked to the door, peering through the peephole. No one was there. Just as I turned to step away, a voice called from outside. "Evelyn," James drawled, his voice calm and chilling. "You can't hide forever. Open the door and maybe I'll make it quick." My heart pounded, but I didn't move. Instead, I yelled back, "You'll never get this house, James. Never." He laughed, the sound echoing through the yard. "We'll see about that." Moments later, the sound of his footsteps faded into the distance. But I knew he wasn't gone. He was playing with me like a predator toying with its prey. That night, sleep was impossible. I sat in the living room with all the lights off, gripping the poker like a lifeline. The cameras were recording every angle, but technology couldn't calm the storm inside me. Around 3 a.m., the cameras picked up movement. A figure creeping through the backyard. "James." I dialed 911, whispering into the phone, "He's here." But before the operator could respond, the power was cut, plunging the house into darkness. Panic surged through me as the emergency lights flickered on. I could hear him, moving along the walls, tapping on the windows. Daniel shouted from the hallway, "He's trying to break in." We gathered in the kitchen, backs against the counter, weapons in hand. Helen clutched a frying pan, Linda grabbed a knife, and Daniel still held the bat. The silence was unbearable, until glass shattered from the back door. James climbed through, his face twisted with madness. "End of the line, Evelyn," he growled, stepping toward us with a crowbar. We scattered. Daniel swung the bat, but James dodged, striking him hard enough to send him sprawling. Helen screamed as he grabbed her arm, yanking her forward. Without thinking, I charged at him, slamming the poker against his back. He roared in pain, turning his rage on me. "You think you're stronger than me," he spat. "You're just an old woman." But as he raised the crowbar to strike, Linda came from behind, stabbing his leg with the knife. He howled, dropping the weapon. Daniel, despite his pain, swung the bat again, this time hitting James square in the chest. He fell to the floor, gasping. I stood over him, the poker trembling in my hands. "You will never win, James," I said, my voice steady. Before I could decide what to do next, flashing lights filled the yard. The police stormed in again, pulling James up from the floor. He fought, screaming like a madman, but they dragged him away. "Take him far away this time," I told the officers. "And don't let him out." They assured me he would be sent to a maximum security prison. Still, as they drove off, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The following day, I tried to return to normal life, but the house felt haunted by his presence. Every corner reminded me of the battles fought within its walls. I should have felt safe, but instead, a deep unease settled in my soul. Days passed without incident, until a letter arrived in my mailbox. The handwriting was messy, but I recognized it instantly. "Evelyn, the house may be yours for now, but I always finish what I start. Sleep with one eye open." My hands shook as I read the words. James had friends, connections, people who could help him even from behind bars. The war was far from over. That night, I locked every door and window, but fear still gnawed at me. For the first time in my life, I wondered if I should leave the house behind to save my life. But as I sat in my rocking chair, staring at the walls filled with memories, I made a decision. I would fight no matter what. They would not take this home from me. I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. Because the next night when I checked the cameras, James wasn't the one lurking outside. It was someone else, someone I didn't recognize. A stranger, staring straight into the camera with a smile even colder than James's. Who was this new threat and what did they want? Don't miss the next chapter, Because the danger lurking outside my home is about to get deadlier. If you're on the edge of your seat, like, comment and subscribe. The darkest twist is yet to come. The stranger's face haunted me all night. Unlike James, who was consumed by rage, this man's smile was calm, almost satisfied, like a predator who had already planned his next move. His eyes were cold and calculating, and he stood there for nearly a minute, staring into the camera, before vanishing into the darkness. I didn't recognize him, but deep down, I felt an unsettling certainty. This wasn't random. He was connected to James somehow. Maybe a friend, maybe a hired hand. In the morning, I called Officer Reynolds and showed him the footage. He frowned. "This isn't good, Mrs. Carter. Whoever this is, he's confident. Too confident. We'll increase patrols, but be careful. Be careful." The words echoed in my head like a warning bell. That afternoon, Daniel and Linda insisted on moving me to a hotel. "Mom, it's not safe here," Daniel pleaded. "Let's leave for a while." I looked at the house, my home, and shook my head. No. If I leave, they win. And I won't let them win. Helen stayed by my side, refusing to abandon me. "If they're coming, Evelyn," she said firmly, "then we'll be ready." We reinforced the doors even more, added extra locks, and I kept the poker close. But my instincts told me it wasn't enough. That night I barely slept, listening to every sound. At 2 a.m., the cameras picked up movement again. The same stranger, but this time he wasn't alone. 2 more figures were with him, both masked. My blood turned to ice. They circled the house like wolves, testing the windows, the doors. I grabbed the phone, dialing 911, but before I could finish, the line went dead. They had cut the wires. My heart pounded as I gathered Helen, Daniel, and Linda into the kitchen, the only room with no large windows. Then the power cut out. The house plunged into darkness, and I heard the soft crunch of footsteps on the porch. A low voice outside whispered, "Get ready." Daniel gripped the bat again, his face pale but determined. Linda held a knife, her hands trembling. Helen stood close to me, her voice shaking as she whispered, "They're coming." Glass shattered as they broke through the back window. Shadows moved across the living room. The intruders were inside. I motioned for everyone to stay quiet. My heart raced so hard I thought they could hear it. One of the masked men crept closer, shining a flashlight across the room. The beam landed on us. "Found them," he said. Before he could move, Daniel swung the bat with all his strength, knocking the flashlight out of his hand. Chaos erupted. Linda stabbed at another man's arm as he lunged at her. Helen screamed, trying to hit the third one with a frying pan. I grabbed the poker and swung at the man closest to me, hitting him hard in the ribs. He stumbled back, cursing. The fight was wild, desperate. They were stronger, but we fought like our lives depended on it, because they did. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out. The sound froze us all. The man who fired shouted, "Enough! Hand over the deed, old woman, or you all die right here." My knees almost buckled, but I stood tall. "You'll have to kill me to take it," I said, my voice like steel. The leader pulled off his mask, revealing his face. My heart stopped. It wasn't a stranger. It was James's son, Ryan. "You didn't think Dad worked alone, did you?" he sneered. "He told me everything. That house belongs to us." The fight seemed lost. They had guns and we had nothing but kitchen weapons. But then the sound of sirens blared outside. Blue and red lights flashed through the windows. The intruders panicked. Ryan glared at me. "This isn't over, old woman," he growled before they bolted out the back, disappearing into the night just as the police stormed in. The officers searched the area but found nothing. Ryan and his men were gone like shadows. As the house quieted again, I sat on the floor, my heart pounding. They were coming at me harder, faster, and I was running out of time to fight back. Later that night, while the others slept, I went to my safe and pulled out the original house deed. My fingers traced the edges as I thought about everything I'd endured. This paper was more than property, it was my life, my memories, my power. But as I stared at it, I knew keeping it hidden wasn't enough anymore. If I wanted to end this, I had to take the fight to them. The next day, I packed a small bag, leaving a note for Helen and the kids. I'm ending this once and for all. I got into my car and drove, my destination clear in my mind, the prison where James was being held. I needed answers, and I was going to get them, even if it meant walking straight into the lion's den. When I arrived, the guard looked at me strangely. "You're here to see James Carter?" he asked. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "Tell him Evelyn is here." Minutes later, they led me into a small visiting room. James sat on the other side of the glass, smiling like a man who knew he still had the upper hand. "Well, well," he said. "You came to me." I leaned forward, my eyes burning with determination. "This ends now, James. Tell me where your son is, or I'll make sure you never see the light of day again." He chuckled darkly. "Oh, Evelyn. You have no idea what's coming. Ryan isn't just after the house. He's after you. And he won't stop until you're buried 6 feet under." Before I could reply, James leaned closer to the glass and whispered something that made my blood run cold. "He's already inside your house." My heart stopped. Helen and the kids were still there. Stay tuned for the next chapter, because the next events will push me to the edge. If this story has you holding your breath, like, comment, and subscribe. The fight for survival is about to explode. My breath caught in my throat as James' words sank in. "He's already inside your house." The guard's voice pulled me back to reality. "Ma'am, your time is up." I bolted out of the prison, fumbling with my keys as I rushed to the car. My hands shook so violently I nearly dropped them. I called Helen, but there was no answer. I tried Daniel. Straight to voicemail. Panic clawed at my chest. The drive home was a blur. Every red light felt like an eternity, every turn a battle against time. When I pulled into my driveway, my worst fear came true. The front door was wide open, swinging in the wind. I crept inside, clutching the poker I'd brought with me, my heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. The house was eerily silent, but there were signs of struggle. A knocked-over chair, a shattered vase, and drops of blood on the floor. "Helen!" I called, my voice trembling. "Daniel! Linda!" No answer. Only the creak of the old house responding to my panic. I stepped further in, every shadow looking like a threat. Then I heard it, a faint groan coming from upstairs. I climbed the stairs slowly, my legs trembling. The door to my bedroom was slightly ajar, light spilling from the crack. I pushed it open and froze. Helen was tied to the chair, her mouth gagged, her eyes wide with terror. Before I could move to help her, Ryan stepped out from behind the door, a gun in his hand. His smirk was pure evil. "You came back," he said. "Perfect. Now I can finish what Dad started." My grip tightened on the poker. "Let her go, Ryan. This is between you and me." He laughed coldly. "You still don't get it, do you? This isn't just about the house anymore. You embarrassed my father. You put him in prison. For that you pay. Where are Daniel and Linda?" I demanded. Ryan's smile widened. "Let's just say, they won't be joining us. Not unless you do exactly what I say." Rage and fear battled inside me, but I kept my voice steady. "What do you want?" "The deed. Now." He pointed the gun at Helen. "Or she dies first." My mind raced. I didn't have the deed on me. I'd hidden it in a place even Ryan wouldn't think to look. "It's in the safe downstairs," I lied, trying to buy time. He motioned with the gun. "Move." I led him down to the living room, my hands sweating. The safe was behind a painting, and as I reached for it, my eyes caught something. One of the cameras was still on, recording everything. That gave me an idea. I opened the safe slowly, deliberately fumbling with the code to stall. "Hurry up," Ryan barked, pressing the gun harder against my back. Finally, I swung it open, revealing papers inside. I pulled out a decoy envelope, handing it to him. "Here," I said. "Now let her go." He snatched it, opening it quickly, only to find blank sheets of paper. His face twisted with rage. "You think this is a game?" he shouted, raising the gun. Before he could fire, Daniel burst in from the kitchen, swinging the bat with all his strength. It connected with Ryan's arm, making him drop the gun. Linda rushed in from behind, tackling him to the ground. The struggle was chaotic. Ryan fought like a wild animal, kicking and punching, but together we overpowered him. I grabbed the gun, my hands trembling, and pointed it at his chest. "End this," he spat, daring me. "You don't have the guts." For a moment I almost pulled the trigger. But I didn't. Instead I shouted, "Call the police!" Within minutes, sirens wailed outside. Officers stormed in, dragging Ryan away in handcuffs as he screamed threats at me. "This isn't over, Evelyn. I'll come back. You'll see." The police promised to keep him locked away, but James' words still echoed in my head. They had connections. They wouldn't stop. That night, after everyone was safe and the house was quiet again, I sat on the porch holding the real deed, hidden in a secret compartment beneath my floorboards. I thought about everything I'd endured, the blood and fear soaked into these walls. I was exhausted but not broken. Yet deep inside, I knew this war wasn't done. They had failed twice, but something told me they were planning something bigger, something deadly. And my fears were confirmed when, the next morning, a package was delivered to my doorstep. No name, no address. Inside was a single photo. Ryan smiling in a prison yard, holding a sign that read, "See you soon." My blood turned cold. Stay with me for the next chapter, because what's coming next will be more dangerous than ever. If you're hooked, like, comment and subscribe. The final storm is approaching. The photo shook me to my core. Ryan had been arrested only hours ago, yet he managed to send this threat already. It meant one thing. He had allies both inside and outside prison. They were watching me, waiting for the right moment to strike again. Daniel wanted us to leave town. "Mom, we can't stay here. He'll come after you the second he's free." But I stood firm. "If we run, we'll be running forever. This is my home, and I'm not leaving." Linda looked terrified, clutching Daniel's arm. Helen, though pale and shaken, put her hand on mine. "Evelyn, if you're staying, then so am I. We'll face this together." That night I didn't sleep. Instead I planned. The attacks so far had been reckless and violent, but now I knew they were getting smarter. Ryan's next move wouldn't just be another break-in. It would be something calculated, something final. I decided to set my own trap. Using the house cameras, I created a decoy plan, placing fake deeds in obvious places, leaving clues meant to lure him into the open. The real deed remained hidden beneath the floorboards where only I knew. 2 nights later, my plan was tested. The cameras picked up movement outside again. This time it wasn't Ryan. It was 2 masked men carrying gasoline cans. My heart lurched. They weren't here to steal. They were here to burn the house down with us inside. I dialed 911, whispering into the phone, while Daniel and Linda helped Helen out through the back. We crept silently to the neighbor's yard, hiding behind their shed. I watched in horror as the men splashed gasoline along my porch, preparing to strike a match. Just as one of them raised a lighter, floodlights blazed on. The entire yard lit up like daylight. I had rigged the system earlier, and the sudden brightness startled them. Police sirens screamed in the distance, closing in fast. The men panicked, dropping the lighter and fleeing into the woods. When the officers arrived, they searched but found nothing. They assured me they'd keep a watch, but my gut told me these attacks were far from random. This was Ryan's doing. His influence reaching even while behind bars. The next morning I visited the prison again. This time I wasn't asking questions. I was giving warnings. James was in the visitor's room, smirking as if he had been expecting me. "You look tired, Evelyn," he mocked. "Not sleeping well." I leaned close to the glass, my eyes sharp as steel. "Tell your son this ends now. The next time he or anyone else comes near my house, it will be the last thing they ever do." James chuckled darkly. "You think you're in control? "Evelyn, you're just an old woman standing against a storm. And storms always win." I stood, refusing to let his words sink in. "We'll see who wins." Back home I tightened every security measure. But late that night, my fears were confirmed again. The phone rang, and when I answered, a voice I didn't recognize whispered, "You have until tomorrow night to leave the house, or we'll burn it with everyone inside." The line went dead. I gathered everyone in the living room, my voice steady despite the dread clawing at me. "They're giving us one night. That means they're coming soon. But this time we'll be ready." Daniel nodded grimly. "What's the plan?" I looked around at the house that had seen so much love and pain. "We fight back. And this time we end it. We set traps, nails under the windows, wires across the hallways, and cameras connected to my phone." The house became a fortress. Then, as the clock ticked toward midnight, we waited in silence. The first sound was the crack of a window breaking. Then footsteps. They were inside. 3 masked figures moved cautiously, unaware of the traps. The first tripped the wire, falling hard onto nails hidden beneath a rug. He screamed, alerting the others. Chaos erupted as they stumbled through the hallways, triggering alarms. Daniel fought one off with the bat while Linda threw boiling water at another. I stood in the center of the living room, holding the gun I had taken from Ryan days before. My hands didn't shake this time. The leader, taller than the rest, stepped forward. He ripped off his mask. "Ryan." My heart froze. He had escaped. Again. "You didn't think prison could hold me, did you?" he sneered. "Tonight this ends, with you dead and this house in ashes." I raised the gun, aiming straight at him. "Not tonight, Ryan." He lunged at me, but before he could reach, a deafening gunshot rang out. He stumbled back, clutching his shoulder. The police had stormed in, guns drawn, taking control. Ryan was dragged away screaming, his voice echoing, "I'll kill you, Evelyn. I'll kill you." As they drove off with him, I collapsed into Helen's arms, trembling with both fear and relief. The nightmare seemed to be over, but deep down I knew Ryan wasn't done. He would come back stronger and angrier. The battle for my home was reaching its peak, and the final confrontation was inevitable. The next morning I received another envelope. Inside was a burned piece of wood from my porch and a note. "Final warning. Tonight everything burns." The endgame had begun. Don't miss the next chapter, because the final showdown will be the most explosive yet. If you're still here with me, like, comment and subscribe. The firestorm is coming. The burned piece of wood sat on my table like a ticking bomb. The note's message was clear. Tonight would be the final assault. There would be no more threats, no more games. Ryan and his allies were coming to finish me and destroy everything I held dear. I didn't panic. I didn't cry. Instead, I felt a strange calm wash over me, the calm of someone who had endured too much to be afraid anymore. If tonight was the last battle, then I would make sure it ended on my terms. I called Officer Reynolds and told him about the threat. "We'll send patrols," he said, but his tone was uncertain. I didn't trust the police to stop what was coming. This fight was mine. Daniel wanted to send me away. "Mom, we can't stay here. It's too dangerous." I looked at him, my eyes hard as steel. "Daniel, if we run, we'll never stop running. They will follow us anywhere. This house is our stand." Helen put her trembling hand on mine. "Then we fight together." The day passed in tense silence. We barricaded windows, reinforced doors, and set up every trap imaginable. I even rigged the hallway with a rope tied to a heavy chandelier. It would be our last line of defense. Night fell, and the air was thick with anticipation. The house was dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of the moon. We waited in silence, our breaths shallow, hearts pounding. Around midnight, the attack began. A rock smashed through the living room window, followed by the roar of an engine. 2 trucks skidded to a stop outside, and masked men poured out, armed with bats, crowbars, and torches. Ryan stepped out last, his arm still bandaged from the previous gunshot. His eyes glowed with hatred. "Evelyn," he shouted. "You're done. Tonight, this house burns with you in it." I stood in the doorway, my gun raised, my voice steady. "Not tonight, Ryan. Tonight you lose." I charged. The first man hit a tripwire, crashing onto nails. Another was hit by a swinging plank I'd rigged earlier. Chaos erupted as Daniel swung the bat, Linda threw objects from upstairs, and Helen unleashed pepper spray on a masked attacker. Ryan stormed through the chaos, heading straight for me. He tackled me to the floor, the gun skidding out of reach. His hands closed around my throat. His face twisted with rage. "You should have died when you had the chance," he hissed. I gasped for air, struggling under his weight. My fingers reached desperately until they touched something cold, the poker. With all my strength, I swung it, striking his head. He roared in pain, stumbling back. I scrambled to my feet, grabbing the gun. Ryan lunged again, but this time I was ready. "It's over," I shouted, firing a shot into his leg. He collapsed, screaming. The house was filled with sirens and flashing lights as police stormed in, arresting the surviving attackers. Ryan lay on the floor, bleeding, glaring at me with eyes full of venom. "You haven't won," he spat as they dragged him away. "This isn't over, Evelyn. I'll come back. I swear it." I stood there, trembling but unbroken. "No, Ryan," I said coldly. "This ends tonight." The police assured me this time he would be sent to a federal facility where escape was impossible. But I wasn't convinced. Men like Ryan didn't just disappear. As dawn broke, the house was a wreck. Shattered glass, broken furniture, scorch marks from where they had tried to ignite the walls. But it still stood. I still stood. That morning, as I swept the broken glass, something glinted in the debris. A silver lighter engraved with Ryan's initials. A final reminder of the war that had almost destroyed me. Pocketed it. This house would carry scars, but so would I. And yet there was an eerie silence. Too quiet. My instincts screamed that something wasn't right. Just as I began to relax, the phone rang. I answered, and a voice I didn't recognize said softly, "Ryan may be gone, but his father is still waiting. Tonight the real fire begins." My blood ran cold. James was pulling the strings from behind bars. He wasn't finished. As the sun set that evening, I knew the final confrontation was coming, not just with Ryan, but with the mastermind who had started it all. I braced myself for what would be the most dangerous night of my life. Because the last chapter of this war was about to ignite in flames. Don't miss the next chapter, the final battle where everything comes to a shocking end. If you followed this far, like, comment and subscribe. The conclusion will leave you breathless. The final night came cloaked in a strange stillness. The air was heavy, almost suffocating, as if the entire world was holding its breath. I knew James wasn't bluffing. This would be the night he tried to end me for good. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the silver lighter I'd found in the rubble. It felt like a warning, a token left behind to remind me of what was coming. I slipped it into my pocket, determined to use it if I had to. Helen stayed close, her face pale but her spirit unbroken. "Evelyn, maybe we should leave," she whispered. I shook my head. "If I leave, James wins. This is my home, Helen. I'll defend it to my last breath." Daniel and Linda were in the living room, armed and ready. The traps were reset, the cameras online, and I had reinforced the front door with heavy wooden beams. We were ready, or so we thought. Just after midnight, the first sign came. The power cut out, plunging the house into darkness. Seconds later, an explosion erupted outside, shaking the windows. Fire lit up the night sky. Someone had set the shed ablaze as a distraction. Then came the sound of engines. 2 black SUVs screeched to a stop outside, and figures dressed in black tactical gear poured out. These weren't just thugs. They were professionals, James's final play. My heart pounded as I raised the gun. "Positions!" shouted. They stormed the house, breaking through windows and doors. The traps slowed them down, but they kept coming, relentless. Smoke from the burning shed seeped into the air, making it hard to breathe. Daniel swung the bat, taking one down, while Linda threw whatever she could to slow the attackers. Helen sprayed pepper spray at a man who grabbed her, buying us precious seconds. Amid the chaos, a tall figure stepped through the front door, moving with calm precision. My stomach dropped. James. Somehow he had escaped prison, and now he stood in my home, his cold smile cutting through the madness. "Evelyn," he said smoothly, as if we were old friends meeting for tea. "You've caused me too much trouble. Tonight it ends." I aimed the gun at him. "You're not taking this house, James. Not tonight. Not ever." He raised his hands slightly, smirking. "You think you can stop me? You're just one old woman against an army." "You forget," I said, my voice steady. "This house fights with me." At that moment, Daniel triggered the final trap I had prepared. The chandelier in the hallway swung down like a wrecking ball, knocking two of James's men unconscious. Another stumbled into a rope trap, crashing to the floor. But James kept coming. He lunged at me, knocking the gun from my hand. We struggled, his strength overwhelming, but I fought with everything left in me. We slammed into the kitchen table, sending dishes flying. "You can't win," he hissed, gripping my throat. With my last ounce of strength, I reached into my pocket and pulled out Ryan's lighter. I flicked it open, holding the flame close to his face. The smell of gasoline from the attacker's clothes filled the air. James froze, his eyes widening. "You wouldn't." "Oh, I would," I growled. With a swift motion, I shoved him back into the curtains soaked with spilled fuel from the fight. Flames erupted, spreading fast. The house was engulfed in fire as chaos consumed the attackers. Daniel dragged Helen and Linda toward the back door, shouting for me to follow. James screamed as the flames caught his clothes. I grabbed the gun from the floor, aiming at him one last time. "This is for every night you made me fear for my life," I said and fired. He collapsed, the fire swallowing him. I ran through the smoke, my lungs burning, just as the roof began to crack and fall. Daniel pulled me out the back door, and we stumbled into the yard as the house roared behind us, flames lighting up the night like the sun. We watched in silence as the home I had loved for 50 years burned to the ground. Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't just for the house. They were for everything we had survived. By the time the fire trucks arrived, it was too late. The house was gone, reduced to ashes. But we were alive. We had won. The police confirmed James had died in the blaze. His reign of terror finally ended. Ryan would remain in custody, with no one left to pull his strings. The nightmare was over. Days later, standing in the charred remains of my home, I felt a strange peace. The house was gone, but my spirit was stronger than ever. They had tried to poison me, burn me, and break me, but I was still here. I turned to Daniel, Helen, and Linda. "We'll rebuild," I said softly. "This house may be gone, but our lives are not. And as long as we have each other, we have everything." The fire had taken my home, but it hadn't taken me. This story isn't about losing a house. It's about surviving, about standing up when the world tries to crush you. Thank you for staying with me through this fight. If this story moved you, like, comment, and subscribe. Remember, no matter what they throw at you, never give up.